Welcome, welcome to day 6 of Madonna Rising. Yesterday, Lady Kayleen and Lady Peggy led us on a profound, deep journey of remembering our roots and honoring our lineages. It is by deeply connecting with our roots and honoring our lineages that we can become whole and soar. Today we will journey into the heart of the rose and the rose of the heart. I would like to share with you my screen and whoop, take you into the Chartres Cathedral for a moment. We see here the two rose windows, the north rose window and the south rose window. Lady Kayleen talked to us about the north rose window. She talked about this rose window that in the center we see the Virgin Mary holding baby Jesus. And across from the cathedral, the south window is with its center, we see Christ as the judge of the apocalypse. The north window is the feminine window, and the south, the masculine window. And as Lady Kayleen showed us, right the central lancet window of the north rose window is Saint Anne holding the baby Mary. Right under the lancet, right in the center of the south rose window is Mary holding the baby Jesus. I will do a close-up here. So these are the two lancets that we see. So these two mothers stand facing each other across the cathedral, connecting and beaming their love to one another. Their love field permeates the space and embraces all who pass through. I'd like for us to imagine that we're standing at the altar in the cathedral between these two rose windows. As you face the altar, you see the Assumption, the statue of the Assumption in front of you. And as you know, these days, the Black Madonna sits in front of the statue of the Assumption. So this is what you're looking at as you're embraced and held by the two mothers, the mother and the grandmother. In front of you, as you saw, the dark and the light feminine, representing the Tao, yin yang. And now with the masculine rose on your right side, and the feminine rose on your left side. Feel the energy of the masculine on your right side and the feminine in your left. And with me, please bring your hands slowly onto your heart. Where the two energies, the masculine and the feminine, unite. And let the rose of this union, supported by the mother and the grandmother, blossom and unfold in your heart. Close your eyes and let's remain in this presence for a few seconds.
Recognizing the possibility and the deep truth that from the love of the father and the love of the mother and the love of the grandmothers, we live and breathe and have our being. And acknowledging that sweetness with your hands over your heart. And I invite you to imagine that the heart now is blooming like a rose. Opening those wondrous chambers of the heart with everything that the heart receives. This precious heart that has been beating since you were 20 days in the womb of your mother. And your divine mother and your divine father. So the chambers of the heart are their own kind of rose, receiving, understanding, clarifying, sending the blood to the lungs so that there is spaciousness, and then sending it down and out to feed and sustain this beautiful body that is also a rose. I ask you to drop now with your attention still in the great rose that is your heart. Drop now into the realm beyond the earth, beyond the universe, into the ground of being. And today, that ground of being is a rose garden. I ask you in your imagination to wander through the so many colors of roses. The exquisite fragrance that bathes you as you wander here in the ground of all being. And you are fed with the fragrance. You are fed with the beauty. And somehow this profound nourishment from the ground of your being that is a rose garden, somehow you are able to bring the sense of the rose garden up through the wondrous river, that eternal river that lives and sustains the most subtle parts of our being, and bring this a whole basket full of roses up, and as they bring it up, then pour roses on rose petals and roses onto your feet and all the way up your legs and your knees and your body and the root chakra, and feeding your organs, your physical organs, and feeding your subtle organs all the way up, all the way back to the heart, and feeling it then just expand so exquisitely, all this bouquet of roses coming up into your throat so that you can feel the fragrance, and then up through your beautiful brain, which is its own kind of rose, and the top of your head, and then spilling out rose petals everywhere, roses everywhere around you, your whole field imbued with beauty, with fragrance, with the essence of the rose. And as it billows out around you in a rainbow of rose petals, going back into the ground of being and feeling yourself restored again in this ever-flowing fountain of roses today. And if you will return now to the great rose of the heart, it has the capacity to create roses. So first, I'm going to ask you to have the sense that your heart is opening and your hands are opening out and you're holding a rose. And I'm going to ask you to give to the energy and the caring sense, the presence. Give this rose to that which you love the most in this world. Just present with your heart's love what you care for the most deeply in this world, and bow in reverence to what love that is. And feel the presence of that which you love, accepting the rose and passing it on, passing it on. And then your heart's great center has the capacity to create another rose and pours it into your hands. And this one I ask you to give to that which you fear the most, that which makes you most afraid. Honoring it and giving that fear or that which you fear a beautiful rose of your own choosing, your own creation, so that the fear is softened and the fragrance of the rose carries it into a different dimension. And feel this feared one accept the rose and take it in, so that things, the chemistry between you changes because of the gift of the rose. And taking a deep breath in, if you will, and allowing your great heart rose to create another giant rose and pours it into your hands. And maybe this one is just every color rose you can imagine, including the most mystic of them all, the blue rose, and feel yourself giving it to the whole world, every part of the world, pouring out roses and rose petals, and the profound spiritual power that the rose holds as a symbol and as a reality. Blessing the world today with rose wishes and rose petals and roses and rose plants and everything rose you can imagine. All over the world, from your heart. And then one more grand creation from your own rose heart. Make it a gift now to all that is. To the great mothers of our own line and the spiritual line. To the great fathers and the spiritual line and the bloodlines. But even beyond them, a gift to all that is in gratitude for the glorious rose, tender, fragile, impermanent, but so beautiful, the rose that is life. And one more, a fifth rose today. This one give to yourself. Any part of your body, just patting your whole body, roses, roses. Mary Oliver ends one of her beautiful poems with these words: roses, 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 roses. And now the rose is turned to song, and it goes to Ruth.
Hello, everyone.
So breathing in roses.
Thank you, thank you. I now turn the rose over to Lady Anne and ask Ruth to sing for us first for a few seconds.
There is a line in a poem by Walter de la Mare that goes, "Oh, no man knows through what wild centuries rose back the rose." I first read that poem when I was at university, and it haunted me for years and years until I began to write The Dream of the Cosmos. I did not know then that the rose was the primary symbol of the feminine archetype, the great goddess and the soul, nor that it was dear to the Sufi poets. Now I know that the rose is the greatest mystic symbol of the West, just as the lotus is of the East. Like the 1,000-petal lotus or the jewel in the heart of the lotus of the Eastern traditions, the rose came to symbolize not only the radiant love of the divine ground, but the awakened soul that has been united with it. In the Christian tradition, the rose was associated with the Virgin Mary, and in the Gnostic and alchemical tradition, with Sophia, divine wisdom, and the Holy Spirit. As an initiatory path, the sacred way of the rose symbolizes the hidden feminine wisdom tradition and the way of the heart. The rose represents love, creation, fertility, wisdom, beauty, and also mystery. Its exquisite beauty, its fragrance, the soft velvety feel and symmetrical disposition of its many petals, and its golden center made it a symbol of perfection, not only earthly perfection, but heavenly perfection. Drawing on ancient mystery traditions originating in Egypt and Persia, the rose was a central symbol in both European and Islamic alchemy, a symbol of the opening of the heart to the revelation and experience of divine love. It was immortalized as the white rose at the end of the Divine Comedy in Dante's great vision of paradise. And the sublimely beautiful rose windows of Chartres could be seen as a vision of divine wisdom and the Holy Spirit, holding at their heart Christ and the Virgin Mary. There is a six-petaled rose at the center of the labyrinth of Chartres, and whoever has walked or will walk the path of the labyrinth is treading the sacred way of the rose from circumference to center, and the return journey from center to circumference, taking with him or her the experience of the central circle, which is the direct communion with the energy and frequency of divine love. The rose is one of the oldest symbols of divine wisdom, the Holy Spirit, radiating love to our world from the invisible ground of the cosmos. Its Christian origins and its association with an enclosed garden or sacred temenos go back to the words of the bridegroom in the Song of Songs or Song of Solomon. A garden enclosed is my sister, my bride, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. But there is also the Persian image of roses within an enclosed garden representing paradise. The very word paradise comes from the Persian word paradis. Imagine what the gardens of the magnificent city of Persepolis, filled with roses, might have looked like before it was burnt to the ground by Alexander the Great. The origins of the sacredness of the rose can be traced to the beautiful 8-year orbital pattern made by the planet Venus. 8 was the number associated with Venus in Sumer, addressed as the radiant star and the great light in a Sumerian poem. Astronomers and mathematicians noticed the geometric connection between the orbit of Venus and the distribution of the petals of the rose, with its hidden golden center. The outer rim of the picture on the left is the Earth's orbit around the sun, and the inner circle with its 5-petaled rose pattern is the orbit of Venus. From ancient times, Venus as the bright morning and evening star was associated with the great goddesses of the ancient world, particularly with Isis and Inanna, but also the Greek goddess Aphrodite and the Roman Venus. Now, I would like to take you back in historical time to earlier ages. Homer wrote of the rosy-fingered dawn, but the image of the rose goes much further back to the temple and palace gardens of Egypt and Crete, of Sumer and Babylon. I will show you a few images from the ancient past. The rose, as I've said, was always associated with the goddess in the ancient world. This is why the 2 griffins guarding the throne room in the palace of Knossos have stylized roses placed at their heart. Look carefully at these griffins. For the people of Crete, they symbolize the triple domains of the great goddess, sky, earth, and underworld, represented here by the bird, the lion, and the serpent as the curved tail of the lion. I didn't know this until someone pointed it out to me. So there are all 3 aspects of the goddess included in this figure of the griffins. Friezes of roses also adorned the frescoed walls of Mycenaean palaces built near the coasts of Greece. But this throne room was a sacred place where a priestess presided over the shamanic rites of the goddess. An 8-petaled rose is the center of this 4,000-year-old disk from the palace of Phaistos in Crete, whose meaning has only recently been tentatively deciphered. The disc is covered with a total of 241 picture segments created from 45 individual symbols, and is thought to be a prayer or an invocation to the Cretan mother goddess. It may also represent the labyrinthine path connecting this world with the other invisible one, the path souls took as they journeyed from one to the other, into and out of the womb of the goddess. Roses were painted on early terracotta vases and strung on gold necklaces, now reposing in the museums of Athens and Heracleion. They are found on this exquisite diadem and funeral wreath found in the tomb of Philip of Macedon at Vergina, near Thessaloniki in northern Greece. The funeral wreath rested on the head of the person laid on the funeral pyre, possibly that of Philip himself, and was removed just before the flames consumed it, which is why it has survived intact to our time. I think roses may have then been an emblem of immortality, and the diadem may have been worn by Philip's wife or daughter at their wedding. Just think of the beauty of this diadem on the woman who wore it. Just amazing. And the tiny, tiny roses all over it. The treasures found in Philip's tomb were simply staggering. I couldn't believe it when I went to see them. It was in a dark place, so everything was illuminated, like a vision almost. This is Philip's funeral casket, studded with gold and blue rose medallions. Philip was assassinated at his daughter's wedding, leaving the way for the phenomenal rise of Alexander, his more famous son, whose tomb has never been found. Turning to Egypt, the Metropolitan Museum has published a book on roses from ancient Egypt to the 21st century. I haven't read it, but no doubt it would have pictures showing how the Egyptians used roses to make rose water and oil of rose perfume for use in the temple rituals, as well as for personal adornment and healing. It is beyond doubt that wherever the rose grew in the ancient world, it was associated with the Great Mother and Great Goddess. Roses may not have looked like our roses today, but maybe ancient temple gardeners knew how to grow different and more beautiful varieties to adorn her statues, decorate her shrines, and strew on the processional way of the great ceremonies in her honor, such as the annual celebration of the sacred marriage. We know that roses were associated with the goddess Isis through a dream that a man called Lucius Apuleius, an initiate of the mysteries of Isis, recounts in The Golden Ass. It is a fascinating story of metamorphosis brought about by the process of awakening, or in Jungian terminology, individuation. Apuleius tells the story of his transformation into the form of an ass, a punishment for profaning the mysteries of the goddess Isis, and how, after much suffering and remorse, the goddess came to him in a dream and told him to attend a public ceremony held in her honor. She would send the high priest a dream instructing him to carry a garland of roses in her procession. She told Apuleius in his ass form that he was to push through to the front of the crowd, come up to the high priest as if he wished to kiss his hand, then pluck the roses from his garland into his mouth and eat them. He would then be transformed from an ass back into a man. Apuleius found himself watching the procession until he saw the high priest approaching, holding up the promised garland. Carefully, he wriggled his way through to the front of the crowd until he came level with the high priest. My heart trembled, said Apuleius, and my heart pounded as I ate those roses with loving relish. And no sooner had I swallowed them than I found that the promise had been no deceit. To his amazement and joy, as well as the astonishment of the high priest and the bemused crowd, he found himself miraculously changed back into his human form, covering his private parts in embarrassment until a cloak was thrown over him. Later, he had an extraordinary vision of the goddess where she spoke to him, revealing who she was. It is well worth reading this story in the original text and translation by Robert Graves. The apparition of the goddess in his vision of her is so vividly described that we could almost be seeing it ourselves. In Greece, we know that the rose was sacred to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, and that her priests wore wreaths of white roses in their hair, and that these same white roses were strewn over the approach to her temples. And when in Roman times Aphrodite was transformed into Venus, roses were still sacred to her and would have embellished her shrines and been worn by her priestesses. We also know that in Rome, the statues of the goddess Cybele were adorned with roses, and that once a year her effigy as the Great Mother was covered with roses and carried through the streets of Rome on a chariot. As Jules and I wrote in The Myth of the Goddess, it may be at this time, when her mysteries were celebrated in Rome, that the rose began to evolve as an image of resurrection, and the rose garden as a sacred world or hidden dimension of the goddess. Even to this day, in Spain, Italy, and Sicily, roses are strewn over the statues of Mary and other female saints and cover the heavy chariots as they process through the streets of towns that still, after thousands of years, without being aware of what they are doing, celebrate the ancient ceremonies of the goddess. This is a procession in honor of Saint Agatha, the patron saint of Sicily. White roses or pink roses, a Saint Christian symbol of virginity, are carried in vases on her chariot. Now, angels are sadly out of fashion nowadays, but in the Middle Ages and for centuries before that, people had visions of them and received messages from them. Anyone familiar with Kabbalah will know that angels and archangels are represented in the diagram of the Tree of Life. I found this interesting passage on Google, written by a woman called Whitney Hopler. People regularly report smelling the fragrance of roses while communicating with angels in prayer or meditation. Angels use rose scents as physical signs of their spiritual presence with people, because roses have a powerful energy field that vibrates at a higher electrical frequency, the highest of any flower on earth. Because angelic energy also vibrates at a high rate, angels can connect more easily with roses than with other flowers that have lower vibrational rates. In comparison, rose essential oil vibrates at a rate of 320 megahertz of electrical energy. In comparison, essential oil from lavender, one of the next highest frequency flowers, vibrates at a rate of 118 megahertz. In Catholicism, the scent of roses is often called the odor of sanctity because it indicates the presence of spiritual holiness. People have reported smelling the fragrance of roses after praying to saints to intercede for them with God. I hope that all of you can catch the scent of the roses that you've smelt in the past and bring it into life now, this delicate fragrance that all of us have experienced. The quintessence of the rose is the attar of roses made from rose petals, particularly in Bulgaria, Turkey, Iran, and India. For millennia, women have gathered these roses in preparation for them being dried and pressed to yield an exquisite fragrance or a divine perfume, as the picture says. Turning to the east, to Persia, whose beautiful gardens were the earthly symbol of paradise, the ancient and marvelous city of Shiraz was called the City of the Rose. The most famous poem of Sadi, the great Persian poet who lived in Shiraz, was called The Garden of Roses. Shiraz was saved from the terrible massacres that befell other Persian cities as the Mongols invaded Persia, because its governor opened the gates of the city and invited the Mongol general to a banquet in his honor. No doubt roses adorned the tables laid out for the welcoming feast. In Islam, the rose symbolizes the Prophet Muhammad and is known as the flower of heaven. Rumi wrote many beautiful verses about the rose, such as this one. That which God said to the rose and caused it to laugh in full-blown beauty, God said to my heart and made it 100 times more beautiful. And this, I'm created from the ecstasy of love, and when I die, my essence will be released like the scent of crushed rose petals. And this, love is the infinite rose garden. Eternal life is the least of its blooms. For lovers of the rose like Rumi, this flower was and is an epiphany or manifestation of the divinity at the heart of life. I found these words of a scientist and physicist called Suresh Emri, who must surely be a Sufi. And because his words give such an exquisite rendering of the significance of the rose in Sufism, I will quote them at some length. Rose symbolism in Rumi's poetry, he says, is breathtaking. Rumi used the rose and nightingale symbolism of Persian literature to explain the central theme of Sufism, divine love. In Persian literature, the rose symbolizes beauty, and the nightingale is the lover of beauty. The Sufi loves God as a nightingale loves a rose. The lover wants to be one with the beloved, and the soul yearns for the ultimate union with God. For me, he says, the rose is a symbol of the soul. The seat of the soul is the heart, which is not the organ, but the subtle center of our being. The rose symbolizes the life-giving core of our being, the soul. The source of life is the divine center, and there are many other names for the divine center: cosmic soul, cosmic consciousness, Parama Purusha, self, one, source, Atman. Our soul has this amazing capacity to reflect the infinite love emanating from the divine center, and this reflection causes an irresistible attraction. This is divine love. The rose symbolizes the divine love indirectly, because the rose is the symbol of the heart, which is the soul. Cosmic consciousness, he says, is at the core of each entity in its entirety. Entities owe their existence to this core, the soul. We can say it and perhaps partially understand it intellectually, but the full realization of this secret is the subject of spiritual practice. We can talk about it, but the secret remains secret. The rose symbolizes the correct path to attain the secret, and the correct path is the path to divine love. In Islam, the fragrance of a rose represents the sacredness of people's souls. The Sufi teacher Hazrat Anayat Khan wrote this: just as the rose consists of many petals held together, so the person who attains to the unfoldment of the soul begins to show many different qualities, and these emit fragrance in the form of a spiritual personality. The rose has a beautiful structure, and the personality which shows the unfoldment of the rose also has a fine structure in the manner of relating to others in speech, in action. The atmosphere of a spiritual being pervades the air like the perfume of a rose. Now I'm turning to quite a different element in this story. Some of you may remember a book from your childhood called The Secret Garden. For years, it was my favorite book. Even as an adult, I used to read it and reread it. It tells the story of two orphan children, a lonely girl and a crippled boy, brought together in a huge house in the country in England. The girl, wandering alone around the grounds, by chance finds a buried key to a door hidden behind a wall of ivy, guided there by a robin. Entering the garden, she finds it abandoned, overgrown with weeds and creepers. Once it had been the favorite garden of the boy's mother, who had died giving birth to him. Together with another older boy, the two children worked to bring the garden back to life, freeing its trees, uncovering the tangled stems of hidden roses, and planting bulbs for the spring. And as they do so, the crippled boy is restored to perfect health, declaring, "I shall live forever." I found him always moving, these words. He is reunited in the garden with his astonished father, who had rejected him through the grief of losing his wife. and had not entered the garden since her death. This wonderful story is a metaphor for the lost garden of our soul that needs to be restored and loved, its roses encouraged to bloom again. It is also a metaphor for the lost garden of the goddess. Before we wrote The Myth of the Goddess, Jules Cashford, my co-author, had a dream of an abandoned garden that we were told to restore. This brings me to the rose garden, which has a long history going back to the temple courtyards of the goddess of the ancient world, then becoming central in Persia with the idea of the paradise garden, reflected in exquisite floral designs on carpets, as well as walled gardens with crystal water flowing through channels from the fountain at their center. After the Arab conquest of Persia, North Africa and Spain, the rose garden found its way to the courtyard gardens of the Alhambra and other Moorish cities, and thence to the monastery gardens of Europe. When I was 15, on my first visit to Spain with my grandmother, I was fortunate enough to sit alone for hours in the courtyards of the Alhambra when there was as yet no crowds of tourists. That was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It is in the 12th century that the rose garden became the standard image of paradise. The Cistercians built some of the most perfect cloister gardens, and a Cistercian begins a poem by describing the garden as an earthly paradise, a place secret and far from our clime, a place of eternal spring and flaming with roses that never wither or die. In the 12th to the 15th centuries, the cloister garden, with its rounded Romanesque or sometimes pointed Arabic arches, came originally from Persia, and the walled Persian garden as a symbol of the earthly paradise. In Christian culture, the memory of the lost Garden of Eden endowed the garden with mystic significance as a locus secretus, a sanctuary and place of immortality. Monasteries built their cloisters with a fountain or a well at the center, or a lemon and orange tree, symbol of the moon and the sun, and they festooned their cloister gardens with roses. I think I remember roses in the tiny cloister garden where St. Anne, the soror mystica of St. Francis, used to live. The 12th century was the century of the Crusades, when thousands of men from all over Europe were leaving for the Holy Land. It was a century of pilgrimage, when tens of thousands of pilgrims set out on long journeys to sacred sites like Vézelay or Compostela, or the many shrines of the Black Madonna, such as Le Puy. It was the century which saw the dissemination of the Grail legends throughout Europe, and it was also the century which saw the rise of rose symbolism and the association of the rose and the rose garden with the Virgin Mary as the Rosa Mystica and the Hortus Conclusus, or enclosed garden. But it was also the century which saw the rose associated with the exalted lady of the troubadours, who may well have been Mary Magdalene. Because of all these events, Europe was in a turmoil of excitement and creativity. In 1969, a most wonderful book was published called The Rose Garden Game by a woman called Ethne Wilkins. And this beautiful painting called The Little Paradise Garden by a painter of the same name is on its cover. The book is about the profound symbolism of the rosary and the rose. She writes that at this time it was difficult to distinguish between sacred love and profane love because both are suffused with erotic undertones. The troubadour and the monk are barely distinguishable from one another, each dedicated to his lady, composing songs for her, aspiring to be crowned with roses at her hands, or kneeling to offer her roses. It was at this time that the rose garden and the rosary began to assume mystic significance, always connected with the heart. Mary was described as the walled rose garden, a garden enclosed, as the Song of Songs described the beloved and the bride. Mary is the rose without a thorn, the peerless rose, identified with the rose of Sharon in the Song of Songs, that had become the text for contemplation during this period. That is why roses adorn many paintings of the Annunciation and the Assumption. Mary is the rose, and she also bears the rose, her son Christ. She sits in a rose arbor, surrounded by angels. The rose is also a symbol of the Garden of Paradise, where the souls of the dead reside, and is therefore associated with the idea of resurrection. The sepulchral garden where Mary Magdalene met the resurrected Christ and took him to be the gardener was seen as a reflection of the Creator walking in the Garden of Paradise among the souls of those who have left this world for another, better one. Mary is also the rosary, and the rosary itself is an enclosed garden. The rosary, which means crown of roses, involves offering a group of prayers to Mary as a spiritual bouquet, sometimes a series of Ave Marias or Hail Marys, sometimes the Pater Noster or Lord's Prayer as well. There are usually 50 beads, but the number can vary. The rosary helps people to remember, to get in touch with the Virgin Mary, with the beads helping to remember how many prayers one has said. Other cultures, such as the Buddhist, Hindu, Tibetan, and Islamic, also have strings of beads and use the beads in the same way to focus their minds on prayer and their connection to spirit. Now, I've brought this in because I thought it might interest those of you who don't know about the rosary, which I didn't myself. The rosary traditionally had 15 mysteries related to specific events in the lives of Jesus and Mary. The mysteries are grouped in 3 series: the joyful, the sorrowful, and the glorious mysteries. The palm tree or bush on the left introduces the joyful mysteries. The palm is a symbol of glory. In Christian tradition, it stands for the victory of Christ over death, and it suggests resurrection and immortality. It tells the story of Mary as the mother of Jesus. And at the foot of this tree is Moses leading the Jewish people to the promised land. The blackberry bush or tree in the center introduces the sorrowful mysteries, which are symbolized by the Pietà. The blackberry tree or bush with its thorns is a symbol of suffering and death, and its branches laden with thorns refer to the mysteries and events of Jesus' passion and death. The scene at the foot of the blackberry tree shows Joseph thrown into the well by his brothers. Joseph is, of course, a symbol of Christ, and Joseph's brothers are reminiscent of Christ's persecutors. The large rose bush or tree on the right is adorned with red and white roses. The rose bush symbolizes the glorious mysteries. These begin with the resurrection of Christ and end with the Assumption and coronation of Mary. The red rose stands for love and the white for virginity. The scene at the foot of the rose tree shows Mary as the seat of wisdom and tabernacle of the eternal word. The baskets filled with flowers symbolize the gifts of wisdom. Mary is giving out these gifts to humanity. I think there are echoes in this picture of the goddess as the tree of life. Now we move to a different row for the rose and the rose garden. For the rose garden was also the meeting place of lovers, and the rose itself was the gift from a lover to the lady of his heart. The exquisite texture, form, and color of the red rose, as well as its delicious scent, made it the supreme image of love and beauty. Obviously, in many cultures, it was associated with the beauty of woman. No young man of the Middle Ages and early Renaissance would have dreamed of courting his beloved without presenting her with a rose, the supreme symbol of his love and of his heart. Spiritual love was closely intertwined with erotic love at this time, and sometimes it is difficult to distinguish whether the lady addressed by a devotee is the Virgin Mary or a beloved woman, as when Dante speaks of Beatrice. Lady, you are so great, so powerful, that who seeks grace without recourse to you would have his wish fly upwards without wings. There are many other texts where the exalted lady becomes, as in Dante's description of Beatrice, a spiritual guide who is symbolized by a rose. This lady is always beautiful and supremely wise, Madonna Intelligenza, imparting a spiritual teaching to her lover. Love is exalted as the desire of the lover's whole being to be united with this feminine being who is essential to his completion. And that feminine being who is variously addressed as queen and as divine wisdom, Sophia or Sapientia, is symbolized by the rose and in religious texts associated with Mary and the bride in the Song of Songs. The erotic tone of these texts is striking and all-pervasive. This is just my favorite image, really. I absolutely adore these tapestries. So there's a famous series of 6 15th century tapestries found during the last century in a remote chateau in the Auvergne, and now miraculously preserved in a museum in Paris, the Musée de Cluny. They are one of the greatest and most exquisite treasures of the late Middle Ages. One of the tapestries shows a woman making a coronet of roses with what appears to be a stylized rose or rosette, holding up the folds of her dress. Can you see the coronet? If you look very closely, you can see between her hands this coronet of roses. No one knows who commissioned these tapestries or what their meaning is, although 5 of them have been identified with the 5 senses. But this tapestry, which is my favorite, is the most fascinating of them all. It shows a beautiful woman flanked by a lion and a unicorn, standing in front of a tent that is covered with tiny flames, which I only just noticed as I was writing this talk. And I think these tiny flames might symbolize the Holy Spirit. Inscribed over the entrance to the tent are the words, "À mon seul désir," to my one desire. Her companion is presenting her with a casket of jewels, and she is surrounded by banners holding crescent moons and standing in a garden filled with flowers, animals, and 4 different kinds of fruit trees. I think the symbolism of this image is connected with the lady, la Madonna Intelligentsia that I described earlier, who represents wisdom and who takes us back to the words of Solomon, who prized wisdom more highly than rubies. Whoever commissioned this series of tapestries must have been familiar with Solomon's declaration of his love of wisdom. In the late Middle Ages, when the courts of love were established in the cities of Poitiers and Troyes by Eleanor of Aquitaine and her daughter Marie de France, tapestries and paintings in precious books of hours began to come into being, inspired by these courts that showed lovers in a rose garden or presenting a rose or a heart to their beloved. I wish I could convey to you how these courts of love, inspired by Eleanor of Aquitaine, changed the relationship between man and woman from one of contempt and control to one of respect and admiration, even adoration. They initiated a code of chivalry, encouraging men to develop empathic skills, to learn to write poetry, to behave with grace and courtesy and respect towards women, and to follow a different path from that of a warrior. This new concept of courtly love between man and woman was most highly developed in the most civilized place in Europe at that time, the courts of the Languedoc, namely Foix, Toulouse, and Carcassonne. The Grail legends carried all over Europe by the troubadours with their hidden message about the Church of the Holy Spirit had the same effect. Woman was elevated to a position she has never before or since enjoyed in Christian culture. This is an illustration from one of these books. It's a beautiful, beautiful image. I don't know whether it's the Arthurian legend of, I don't know who, it could be Tristan and Isolde, it could be, I don't know. In 13th century France, there was one illustrated book, an allegory of courtly love, written by 2 authors called Le Roman de la Rose. It told the story of a young man who dreamt of a beautiful rose. When he awoke from his dream, his longing to find it sent him on a quest and led him to a rose garden where his beloved rose was held captive. Ultimately, after many encounters with different people and many trials, he is reunited with his beloved rose. This was a book about the spiritual journey disguised in elaborate symbolism. So here we have the young man at the gates of the garden, his hand clasped by a woman who's going to lead him into it. Notice that it's a woman who's taking him into it, and it's filled with lovers enjoying themselves with music, fountain, fruit trees, just a lovely image of enjoyment between men and women. And here he is, finally united with the beloved Rose of his dream. The Rose inspired this exquisite poem by Abelard, the preeminent philosopher and theologian of the 12th century, whose forbidden love for Eloise, his brilliant pupil, came to a tragic end when she became pregnant and their love was discovered. They both ended up in a convent and a monastery, and I don't know what happened to the child. Take thou this rose, O rose, since thine own flower it is, and by that rose thy lover captive is. I suffer, yea, I die, but this mine agony I count all bliss, since death is life again upon thy lips. Then there is the blue rose. Some years ago, Veronica Goodchild told me about the Order of the Blue Rose that Mary Magdalene established in France during her 20 years of living there. It was Mary Magdalene who brought the Nazarene teaching and the wisdom tradition to France. It is possible that she also brought with her from Alexandria the gospel of the beloved companion that was to become the closely guarded treasure of the Cathars, and that has only recently been allowed to be published. Sapphire blue is the color associated with divine wisdom and is the predominant color of the windows of Chartres. We do not know who guarded and transmitted this hidden wisdom tradition for 1,000 years until it came alive in the 12th century with the quest for the Holy Grail, the Cathar Church of the Holy Spirit, and the building of the sublime Gothic cathedrals of France. There is still so much to be discovered about all three of these. The sacred way of the rose is the way of the heart, the way of the visionaries who from time immemorial nurtured the ancient wisdom tradition, which connected us to deeper levels of reality and opened our soul to awareness of our own divinity and immortality. I believe the great rose windows of Chartres bear witness to the lost tradition of divine wisdom and the Holy Spirit, and offer us the blazing vision of the awakened soul and its reunion with the divine ground. In the final stage of alchemy, the libido, the heart opens like a rose to reveal a fountain of light which overflows with love and compassion towards all living beings. "5 years ago, I bought a book called Rose of the World. I bought it because the title attracted me. It was written by a Russian visionary called Daniel Andreev, who died 35 years ago, tragically young, at the age of 52, having suffered terribly at the hands of the Soviet regime. He foresaw calamities for the world, culminating in a golden age that he called the reign of Rose of the World. This he described as an international movement, unifying the teachings of all religious and philosophical traditions in a worldwide federation, harmoniously regulating the life of the planet in the interests of all life on it, and abolishing poverty, tyranny, war, and violence. The translation of his words into English is difficult to understand, but this is what he wrote about the Rose of the World. Rose of the World can be compared to an inverted flower whose root is in heaven, while the petals are here among humanity on earth. Its stem is the revelation through which the spiritual sap flows, sustaining and strengthening its petals, the fragrant core of all religions. But it also has a pith, a specific teaching, which embodies a new attitude to nature, towards the role of humanity, towards creativity, love, and the root of cosmic ascension. This will be a time when womanhood in humanity will reveal itself with unprecedented strength, in perfect balance and harmony with the male principle. The current state structure will be transformed into a fraternity, working for the benefit of all humanity. I thought this statement was so prescient and so extraordinary that it belongs here at the end of this talk about the sacred way of the rose. I think we could look upon the planet of whose life we are a part as a rose. I hope that in these 3 talks I have given you some insight into what the divine feminine was, how, when, and why it was lost, and how it was preserved for those who can discern its traces. There is much I could have written about the many society of the rose, notably the Rosicrucians, or about the fellowship of the rose, which consists of all those souls who have devoted their lives to assisting humanity to rise to a more conscious level. But there is no time for this today. So I am ending with this image of the great work of alchemy on which we are all engaged. In this coming together over the last 6 days of a Madonna rising, I feel we have truly been in touch with the divine ground of being. And I would like to thank all of you, Jim, Banafshe, Andrew, Peggy, Kayleen, and Rick, and Callan, who I won't hear unfortunately, whose wondrous gifts have created a treasure for all those who have been listening to the presentations. So I will leave the last words and psalms to our beloved Ruth, whose exquisite singing and playing take us into the rose garden of our soul. Whatever their ways, they are all in love with you. Each comes by a path to the rose garden. Thank you.
Whatever their ways, they are all in love with you. Each comes by a path to the rose garden. Whatever their ways, they are all in love with you. Each comes by a path to the rose garden.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for this gift, this wonder, this surprise, this visit to the rose garden of your heart, your mind, your soul. And it is my great pleasure to begin a few moments of tribute to Anne Baring. So Rick, if you would put up the thing that my wonderful friend Trish devised. Can you give it to the whole, can it make the whole thing? It's not all the way up, but the goddess is visible. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, that's perfect. In praise and appreciation to Anne Baring, who emerges from the great throat chakra and the heart chakra of the goddess herself. I'm going to read a couple of things that I think were written in your honor and in the honor of the great wisdom principle herself. And this comes from Makeda, the Queen of Sheba. Wisdom is sweeter than honey, brings more joy than wine, illumines more than the sun, is more precious than jewels. She causes the ear to hear and the heart to comprehend. I love her like a mother, and she embraces me as her own child. I will follow her footprints, and she will not cast me away. And Lynn Gottlieb's beautiful prayer to the wise women of the world. Your words and memories are a blessing in the hearts of the people. May Shekhinah be with you all the days of your life. May you come and go in peace and joy. Know that the seeds of wisdom you have planted on this day will continue to bear fruit in the lives of those present. You are like a mighty tree growing beside still waters. Your roots are deep, your crown wide, and we, gathered under your shade, are blessed. And the roses you have poured out today have entered us in exactly the lightning flash of the Kabbalah, coming from the infinite through the crown, through wisdom, understanding, mercy, power, beauty, victory, splendor, foundation, and kingdom, because the glory of your image of the new kingdom, the new possibility, the new story. Thank you, Anne, with every piece of my heart that I have, for what you have given to me and everybody who knows you and who knows of you. And I now, if you will take this image away, please, Rick, and give us the beautiful Jim Garrison.
Thank you, Peggy. Anne, I just want to say how deeply moved I've been by your contributions this week, doubly so knowing that this marks a retirement, which I hope is short because you're so badly needed. And everyone, I just would say Anne Baring is a world treasure. I don't know of anybody that I can think of. And as you all know, I know a few people around this planet that has so deeply understood the zeitgeist, the needs of our time. Anne Baring's work with Jules Cashford, The Myth of the Goddess 30 years ago, captured comprehensively, encyclopedically, the emergence of the feminine. Probably the most powerful impulse in the world has been the emergence of the feminine, the liberation of women, the goddess in all her dimensionality. And it was Anne Baring in that work that captured it, both historically and in terms of its vitality to the present day. And it was an instant classic. And then Anne's second book, Dream of the Cosmos, took us to the heart of our story, both in terms of the story that got us into the present predicament and crisis, but also, Anne, you imagined, you envisioned a new story that can take us into the world of the rose. So I just want to acknowledge you as a precious, precious gift to our time. And it has been an honor for us to be able to bestow upon you a PhD. It's been an honor for us to have you as a faculty member and as a teacher. And it's been an honor for me personally, and I know many on this call, to be able to count you as a friend. I love you. I salute you and honor the rose that you are.
Thank you, Jim. I just have to say one word, which is that you have given me the opportunity to put forth what I had to give. I didn't have the opportunity till Ubiquity invited me to do these talks. So thank you.
And now, Anne, the wonderful Ruth, the glorious Banafsheh. have a tribute for you, or have something to do in honor of you.
Virtus sapientiae, quae circuiens circuisti, comprehendo omnia in una via quae habet vitam. Tres alas habens, quarum unitum volat, et altera detera sultat, et tertia undique volat, laus tibi sit, sicut te decet. O sapientia. O power of wisdom which circles, circling, uniting all in one journey that holds life, you wield three wings. One soars to heaven, and another draws moisture from the earth, and the third flies everywhere. Praise be to you as is your due. O sapientiae.
Everyone, now I invite you to come and join me in the rose garden. I would like us to take a journey to the Persian rose garden that Lady Anne so beautifully illustrated for us. You can, of course, stay seated. You can dance seated, or you can join me standing. I am going to share my screen, sound. Beautiful. Rick, do we have my screen? Oop.
Yeah, your screen is full.
Beautiful.
You're good, Vanessa.
Everyone, please get ready and wonderful. Here we are. So coming to the rose garden with me, let's go to the rose garden and sense yourself standing on petals, this special rose garden where you're standing on petals. Or if you're seated, sense yourself sitting on petals and smell the fragrance of the rose. Smell the fragrance of the rose. We're going to journey into some of what we did earlier in the 2 sessions that we moved and danced, and weave them together to explore the rose. We'll explore how we let movement fountain from our womb, our matrix, cascading light. And we will also journey into, we will weave the central channel, the coming in touch with the central channel and receiving in our nay, in our flute, the blessings after we have opened ourselves to receive the blessings. So these 2 things that we did together, we'll see how they blend to help us come in touch with the rose blossoming from our heart. So with that, please stand with your feet a little bit wider than your shoulders and open your arms, sensing to the tips of your fingers. Big embrace around yourself. Bring your hands onto your heart. And as you let your knees stay soft, flowing with your breath, inhaling from your nose, exhaling from your mouth, close your eyes. And sensing the ground with your feet, sensing the petals of the rose softly under your feet. Direct your energy down from your head, in case it's in your head, into the rest of your body to create more of a balanced energy circulating in your whole body. And let's dedicate our dance to the rose. To the rose, inner and outer velvetiness, inner and outer velvety continuum, flowing with your breath. Open your eyes and bow down, go down in reverence, letting the top of your head connect with the ground. Your crown connects with the ground, and unfold your arms, coming alive in the back of your legs, letting your face remain nice and soft, nice and relaxed. And here, let's take a deep breath in through our nose, exhaling through our mouth, bending our knees. Flow with your breath. And let your tailbone release down, the top of your head releases further down, and your shoulders, bringing your hands on top of your feet and gently pressing your feet into the earth as the rose petals are adorning your feet softly. Give your reverence to the earth with adoration, with love, and slowly, as you sense your roots go down, grow from this deep-rootedness, sequencing up your spine, letting your head be last to move up and grow from your deep-rootedness, letting your arms come up, and here, take another deep breath in, and with your exhalation, flow with your breath and come in touch with your crown, making spaciousness in your forehead, in your the area of your third eye and in your neck throat. Feel spaciousness in your heart and follow the spaciousness in your abdomen, in your womb matrix dantian, in your hips and in the base of your spine. Sense now, fill up the volume of your legs, sense your roots in the earth and stand with presence in your whole body, loving presence, awareness rooted in our glorious earth, rising into the sky. And stand like this for a few seconds as I play some music for us. Beautiful. Opening your eyes and bring your hands onto your belly, onto letting your thumbs sense into your navel. And let's rotate our hips here. Let's start with the weaving awareness into our body with the circling movement. Standing in the rose garden, rooted in the earth. Letting roses, the energy of the rose, any color that inspires you, fill your legs and fill your hips as you're rotating. Glorious spiraling pattern in the rose. Flow with your breath. One more rotation to this direction. Complete your circle. And change to the other direction. Sensing the roses. Softness, the velvetiness in your hips now, also in addition to your legs and feet. Letting the pattern of the rose, the spiraling pattern, be felt in your hips. One more rotation to this side. Complete your circle. Arrive in the center into a relaxed stillness and bring your hands to your low back and feel the velvetiness of your back, roses in your back. Bringing your hands to stillness and let's go into a wider rotation. Roses in your low back, ease, velvetiness, ease in your back. One more rotation, one more circle to this direction in this wide circle. Come into a stillness, relaxed stillness. Come back with your hands on your belly and go to the other direction with the wide rotation. And as you're rotating, come in touch with your womb, your matrix, the dantian. Spark of light, speck of light as we began in our mother's womb, letting this light grow, letting it grow into your greater abdomen, sensing the warmth in your hands, velvety rose softness in your hands. And let's circle with your hands. Emanating from your womb, your matrix. letting the emanation grow into your abdomen, into your heart, into your arms, into your hands. And touch with your hands gently around you, softly, tenderly, like a rose. One more. Complete your circles and arrive back. Return to your womb matrix. And grow. Now grow into your greater abdomen, into your heart. And rotate your heart center chest. Growing from your womb, your matrix, into your heart. Even if this movement is a little challenging for you, just stay connected with your groundedness. Train your body to stay sensing the ground with your feet. One more rotation to the side. Complete your circle and arrive in the center. Relaxation in your hips. Growing into your heart from your womb matrix. Go to the other direction, emanating from your womb, your matrix into your greater abdomen, into your heart. Circle the rose in your heart. One more rotation, circling the rose in your heart, and come into stillness. Take some steps, sensing your roots. And here, let us rotate our shoulder and other shoulder. Loving awareness in our shoulder. Rosy velvetiness in your shoulder. Ease other arm. Flow with your breath. And extend your arm forward. And other arm. Bring your arms back, hands on your belly. Take some steps now. Rotate your shoulders and shake out your wrists and your hands. In your own way, creating openness. Wherever you feel there's a tightness, bring in the healing, shaking, bring in the energy of the rose, the velvetiness to that area, to those areas. Shake out your wrists and hands, gently stepping on those petals, and loosen up your neck. Side to side. And bring one hand up as you come to stillness in your feet, and take your head to the side and very gently breathe along your neck, shoulder. Velvety rose in your neck, shoulder. Bring your hand down, other arm comes up, and take your head to the side. Breathe. Breathe along your neck, shoulder. Come and touch velvety rose. Ease in your neck, in your shoulders, and bring your hands up. Interlace your fingers behind your head and look down. Breathing in the back of your neck, the ease, the velvetiness of the rose. And look forward. Look forward to sense the top of your head. Gently sense the sides of your head and the sides of your torso, your hips. Gently sensing the velvety ease of the rose in your whole body. And let go. And in your own way, continue moving and releasing. Whether you're seated or standing, free up your energy so we can access deeper, deeper bliss in our body, ecstasy, rapture of just being in our body. Even if you have restrictions and limitations, find the rapture, find the ecstasy of simply being alive. This is the only body you've got. Shake it out in your own way, creating space. Good, good, good. And sense and openness as much as possible in your whole body. Let's bounce here for a moment. Bouncing, sensing, coming in touch with the ney, the flute, the central channel. Feeling your roots and growing through the top of your head. Letting your crown be open. And bring your bouncing to a stillness. And bring your hands onto your belly, thumbs onto your navel, and let's go into the rocking forward and back that we did the other day. Now the soles of your feet are open and you're sensing the petals, softness under your feet, and the velvety softness in your legs, in your hips. Rocking forward and back. Remember, we're rocking on to the balls of our feet, and when you rock back, you're simply going to neutral. And bringing your awareness now deep inside where your index fingers are coming together into your womb, into your matrix. The spark, the speck of light of how we all started in our mother's wombs. As you're rocking forward and back, let this spark, this speck grow. Let its light fill your whole lower abdomen, in your hands, under your palms, and into your hips, and into your legs, into the earth from the openness in the soles of your feet. And let it grow into a greater abdomen, and bring your hands in front of your womb center, in front of your matrix, your belly. And letting our palms now connect. Open your hands away from each other and come back together. Inhale them away and exhale them together. Close together. Growing, letting the light expand into your greater abdomen. And return to your womb matrix where the light emanates from. Grow into your heart and return. It's in your heart that the light finds its greatest brightness. Follow the light into your arms, into your hands, and return. Emanating from your womb matrix and returning. And let the light go into your neck and return. Into your face. Your hands are simply mimicking this pathway that we're following. Let the light come up into the top of your head and return. Out, fountain through the top of your head and return. Beautiful. And as you're following this pathway, raise, emanating, bring your arms up higher to the level of your shoulders. See how effortless it is to bring your arms up because you're emanating from your center, your matrix, your womb. Beautiful. So now with this technique of emanating into our arms, into our hands, I'm going to ask you now to also come in touch with the ney, the flute, the vertical channel that we explored, opened, and let movement fountain from. I'm going to invite you into a wave movement. I'm going to do this standing sideways. You can absolutely do it vertically, standing without doing the wave that I'm going to show. Bring your hands now to your low back. So this wave, following the wave from the earth all the way up the ney, the flute, into the top of our head is the pathway. So we round our back and scoop with our hips, letting this wave rise. And if this is a little bit challenging for you, you can absolutely just imagine what I'm going to guide you into and do the wave, or keep yourself more straight and let the energy rise. Softening in your knees. And now bringing your hands onto your belly as you're letting the wave grow from the earth, sense into your belly, into your womb, into your matrix, where your index fingers are coming together. I want you to imagine, come in touch with this as the bottom of the stem of the rose. Let the rose, the stem, be felt in your abdomen. And let the rose, the blossoms, the petals be felt in your heart. So following with your hands. Let the rose grow from your womb, your matrix, into your heart. Open with your arms. Simultaneously, the roots of this rose go down through your hips into the earth. So emanate from your womb matrix like we were journeying into. And let this emanation now be a rose that blossoms in your heart. And let the fragrance of this rose be felt in your nose. Let the fragrance come up into your face as the rose blossoms in your heart. Follow the pathway of the rose and let it blossom. Let it grow. Let this fragrance grow into your face and out through the top of your head. Moving in deeper and deeper in the beautiful velvety petals of this rose. And bringing your hands down and feeling, sensing the rose having grown into your heart, blossoming in your heart. I'm going to invite you to now go into the movement of the infinity symbol, the 8. The 8 in your hips. Draw the 8 with the base of your spine on the ground. Draw the 8. And again, grow into your heart. Let the blossoming rose expand from your heart as you're doing the figure 8 in your hips, spreading the fragrance of the rose. And keeping your arms up, and I'm going to show you the movement of just coordinating, harmonizing your arms with your hips. So these two movements, this wave, draw the wave up with me. I'm going to do this sideways again. Draw the wave, sequencing up your spine, one vertebrae at a time. Even if you can't do that right now, just know that that's the pathway. Letting the rose grow from your matrix into your heart and rejuvenate yourself with the fragrance of the rose. And spread the fragrance around you with the shape that you're creating with your hands, the circle. And now move into the figure 8. Really filling up the volume of your hips with this sacred pattern, the infinity symbol in the foundation of your body. And grow, let the rose grow. So I'm going to invite you to move in the wave, in the 8, in your own way. And any other way that you're inspired to express this rose that grows, emanates from your womb into your heart, expands in your heart, fragrance felt by you, spread by you, moving in your own way. the rose, pattern of the rose. Growing from your womb, your matrix into your heart, spreading the fragrance, this blooming adoration. And bringing your moving, your dance with back to your heart, to your womb, your matrix. And closing your eyes and just feel. Just feel and see the rose growing from where your hand is on your belly, blossoming in your heart, blossoming in your heart, and receive the fragrance of this blossoming. Let the fragrance be felt by you. And now bring both of your hands onto your face. Touch your face. So delicate, like the petals of a rose. So delicate. Velvety rose in your face. Sensing, feeling your own beauty. And feel, touch your neck, touch, really touch. And feel the velvetiness of your own touch. Feel, embrace. And bring this velvety ease, this opening to the rose of your heart. Bring this energy to the different parts of your body, touch and feel. And let the parts of your body feel the healing touch in your hands, in your own hands. Touching and embracing yourself and feeling the embrace of the mother, of your beloved, whoever comes to you in this embracing moment. And bringing your hands together, touching your lips. In this moment, feel yourself communing with your beloved. And And opening your palms, your eyes are still closed. Opening your palms. گل چرا خندد؟ گل چرا خندد؟ چون که گلرخی خیش در کف گیرد و بنموید. Rumi asks, do you know the secret of why the flower rose is laughing? Do you know the secret? It's because she is holding her own essence, her roseness in her hands, in her palms, and smelling the fragrance of her roseness profusely, smelling the fragrance of her roseness, the essence of her roseness profusely. What is your essence? What is your ness? Pegginess, Anness, Pamela-ness, Jane-ness, Mary-ness. What is your ness? Your essence? Your unique gift? The quality, that particular quality, resonance, that fragrance that only you can emit and emanate in this garden of life. Tend to it, honor it. Stay in it with all your tenderness, all your firmness, all your adoration, all your ferocity. Trust it. Trust it. Let it guide you. This is how she manifests and expresses herself through you. So you and I and all of us can be a rose in the rose garden, in this rose garden of life, and be the loving gardeners of this garden, this gift that we've been given. I ask Ruth now to sing for us.
Whatever their ways, they are all in love with you. Each comes by a path to the rose garden. If we are true to her, the goddess will come to us, guiding the path in all directions. Whatever their ways, they are all in love with you. Each comes by a path to the rose garden.
Bringing your hands onto your heart. Thank you so much. Going down in reverence. Merci. Thank you. And slowly rising with a round back, soft knees. Letting your arms fly up. Spreading the fragrance of the rose that you are for the benefit of all humanity and our world, for the benefit of our planet. And one more time. Now that you've spread your fragrance, let yourself be praised back, blessed back. Let the sugar descend, the sweetness, feel the sweetness. Fill your whole body and fill the earth. Blessings, blessings, blessings. We will have a meet and greet if you wish to join. Have a rosy, rosy rest of your day, evening if you're not going to join us. Give me a moment to set up.